About 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to meet one Nobel Prize winner in the house of another. I was touring Roanoke, the historic home of William Faulkner in Mississippi, with a friend. When I got to meet, I was introduced to Czesławem Miłoszem, the great Polish poet and also Nobel Prize winner. Miłosz was there to lecture to some students, and we got to listen in. And during his lecture, he referenced Faulkner's famous aphorism that the past is never really dead, it's not even the past. What Faulkner knew and Miłosz was emphasizing is that it's often in the interest of the powerful to pretend otherwise, to think that we can bend reality, past, present, and future, to their will, and ignore truth and fact. This attitude has been making something of a comeback recently across the globe, as I'm sure you've noticed. A spokesman for President Trump even said that truth isn't truth, thereby in one sentence summarizing the cynical attitude towards truth that is eating away at the foundations of democracies worldwide. But of course, in reality, truth is truth, and nothing that a presidential spokesman or President Trump or any other authoritarian leader can say can change that fact. But the attitude that's being summed up there, this post-truth attitude, that very much is real. And it's the spread of that attitude that caused me to write this book. When I wrote this book 15 years ago, I was concerned about what I saw as a growing cynicism about truth, both in politics and in theory. I didn't know then how accurate the book would turn out to be, sadly. Because in the intervening years, this attitude towards truth, this post-truth attitude, has become more prevalent, more prominent in both politics and in many ways in our everyday life. What I didn't really foresee then is the way in which, over the last 20 years, how we would receive information and therefore how we would process truth, receive truths or falsehoods, that is, receive information of any sort, how we would consume it, how we would produce it, how we would transmit it to each other, how all those things would change so radically. And of course, they have changed radically in the last 2 decades through the rise of the digital, the Internet of us, as I've called it elsewhere. And the Internet has proven to be an incredible boon for knowledge. It has put us in touch with a world of information and delivered that world of information to us in our pockets. But it's also, as we all know, also delivered in our pockets a world of disinformation and misinformation. And it's that world, that fact about the digital world in which we live in, that authoritarian leaders and tyrants and nationalists across the globe have taken advantage of, and in many ways used to further deepen a sort of cynical attitude towards truth. One of the features of our digital life that has really made this possible is the fact that everything that we encounter on the internet, everything from the news that comes down our Facebook feed to the ads that we see on the media sites we visit, all of that is tailored to fit our preferences. The internet is personalized. It's a personalized information delivery device. And that's great when we're shopping for movies to watch or shopping for books, to be able to get just the information that you desire and which fits your preferences and your pre-existing opinions. But it's not so great when you're shopping for facts, because when you're just getting the facts that fit your pre-existing opinions or preferences, that's not a recipe for bursting your bubble. It's a recipe for inflating it. So the personalization of the internet has very much led to the ability of many state and non-state political actors to craft political messages and craft fake and false political messages and get them delivered right into not just our email inboxes, but onto the feeds, the news feeds that give us what we are perhaps in our naivete thinking is accurate information. The personalization of the internet, in other words, has allowed for the rise of fake news. And that fact, which has now become aware, but people have become aware of that, has led people to become even more cynical about the information that they receive. They've become even more cynical about trusting information that they receive, even information that is accurate or reliable. And that in turn feeds this cynical attitude about truth that I was talking about. Another source of cynicism about truth that I talk about in this book and that continues to this day is the thought that truth itself is too metaphysical of a concept. It's too difficult to define, too vague, perhaps paradoxical. And so we can't ever really understand it or grasp it. So why bother? I think that too is a mistake. Really, to understand the idea of objective truth is not that difficult. You can really get it by grasping pretty much just two simple points. The first point is that believing doesn't make it so. Just because you believe something doesn't mean it's true. And the second point, to paraphrase Hamlet's famous warning to Horatio, is that there's more to heaven and earth than dreamt of in your PowerPoint presentation. In other words, there are more truths out there than you'll know. You don't know everything, and you can never know everything. Now put those 2 points together, that believing doesn't make it so, and you don't know everything, and you get really the concept of objective truth. Just because you believe it doesn't make it true, and just because it's true doesn't mean you'll ever end up believing it. The idea of objective truth is an idea that matters for us, both personally in our life, but also deeply politically. It's tempting by many people to think that truth is in the eye of the beholder, that truth is up to us, that as Protagoras, the ancient Greek rhetorician and philosopher, thought, that truth was something that we created rather than something that we discover. Now, in reality, the nature of truth can vary. It's complex, and its metaphysical nature is something that philosophers have to actually investigate. But one thing I would advise against is to follow into the idea that truth is in the eye of the beholder, because that's an idea that leads to a dangerous political conclusion. Because once you start thinking that truth is what we make it, it's easy to fall into thinking that truth is what the powerful make it, that truth is in the eyes of the powerful. And that is an idea that, once accepted, can cause people to lose the sense of critical dissent. Because if it turns out that truth is in the eyes of the powerful, then you can't really speak truth to power, because the power speaks truth by definition. The end of George Orwell's book, 1984, the protagonist, Winston, is being tortured by the nefarious O'Brien. And O'Brien is torturing Winston into, or trying to torture him into believing, or at least saying, that 2 + 2 = 5. What O'Brien says is that what is true is what the party says is true. And that, he says to Winston, is what you must come to accept. Because what O'Brien realizes is that if he can get Winston to accept that O'Brien, the power, can decide what is true, Winston will lose the ability to engage in critical dissent. And that is why truth, at the end of the day, matters. It matters to us politically because we must be able to engage in critical dissent. We must be able to criticize those in power. We must be able to stand up for principles of justice and reason and not be swayed into thinking that we control either the past or the future, that we can bend it to our will. We must begin to realize that facts matter, truth matters, and accepting that fact puts us on a path to liberation. Thank you.